For years, sustainability has been seen as the gold standard in supply chain management. Organisations have worked hard to reduce emissions, cut waste, lower energy use, and reduce their environmental footprint. That work remains important. But the challenge is that sustainability often focuses on doing less harm. Regenerative supply chains go further. They ask a bigger question. How can supply chains actively restore, revitalise, and improve the systems they depend on? That includes natural systems such as soil, water, forests, and biodiversity. But it also includes communities, workers, local economies, and long-term business resilience. A regenerative supply chain does not simply aim to be greener. It aims to create a positive impact through the whole chain. The key message is this: regenerative supply chains move from doing less harm to creating net positive value. The shift from sustainable to regenerative thinking is important. A sustainable supply chain asks, how can we reduce our footprint? How can we avoid harming people or the planet? Those are valuable questions, but they are not the end of the journey. A regenerative supply chain asks something more ambitious. How can we leave the world better than we found it? That means every sourcing choice, every logistics route, every packaging decision, and every supplier relationship becomes an opportunity to either degrade or restore the systems around us. This is a very different mindset. It moves us away from simply reducing damage and towards creating positive environmental and social outcomes. It also challenges us to think beyond compliance, beyond reporting, and beyond short-term efficiency. Regeneration asks not only how to reduce harm, but how to create positive value for nature, people, and the wider economy. Regenerative supply chains are built around 4 core principles. The first is restoration of natural systems. This means supporting activities that rebuild soil health, restore waterways, increase biodiversity, and move beyond carbon neutrality where possible. The second is empowerment of communities. Supply chains affect real people and real places. Regeneration means investing in fair wages, safe conditions, skills, education, and stronger local economies. The third principle is circular economy integration. Instead of the traditional take, make and dispose model, regenerative supply chains keep products and materials in use for longer. The fourth is positive social impact. Procurement, sourcing, and logistics decisions can support diversity, inclusion, local enterprise, and more resilient communities. Together, these principles create value for nature, people, and long-term business performance. That is what makes regeneration different. It is not just an environmental agenda. It is a whole system approach to better supply chain design. One of the clearest features of regenerative supply chains is the restoration of natural systems. Traditional sustainability might focus on reducing carbon emissions or lowering waste. Regeneration asks whether the supply chain can help rebuild the ecosystems it depends on. That could mean supporting soil health through regenerative agriculture. It could mean investing in reforestation, protecting biodiversity, restoring waterways, or using sourcing choices that encourage better land management. It could also mean working with farmers, growers, and producers who are actively improving the environment rather than simply extracting from it. This matters because supply chains are deeply connected to nature. Food, textiles, minerals, timber, water, energy, and packaging materials all come from natural systems. If those systems become weaker, supply chains become weaker too. So regeneration is not just good for the planet, it is also good risk management. Regeneration strengthens the ecosystems that supply chains depend on. Regenerative supply chains are not only about the environment, they're also about people and places. Every supply chain touches communities. It affects employment, wages, working conditions, skills, health, education, and local economic resilience. A regenerative approach asks whether the supply chain is leaving those communities stronger or weaker. That means moving beyond purely transactional supplier relationships. Instead of simply asking for the lowest price, organisations need to build trust-based partnerships that support long-term value. This could include investing in fair wages, safe working conditions, local enterprise, education, healthcare, training, and community resilience. It also means using procurement to support diversity, inclusion, and opportunity. When communities are stronger, supply chains are often stronger too. Suppliers become more stable, relationships become more trusted, risks become easier to manage. The key point is simple: regeneration creates stronger communities as well as stronger supply chains. Circular economy thinking is central to regenerative supply chains. The traditional supply chain model is often linear: take materials, make products, use them, and then dispose of them. That model creates waste, loses value, and increases pressure on natural resources. A circular supply chain works differently. It aims to design out waste and keep products, components, and materials in use for as long as possible. That might include reverse logistics, product take-back schemes, repair, refurbishment, remanufacturing, and recycling. It could also mean designing products from the start so they are easier to reuse, repair, or recover. Circularity changes how we think about value. A product is not simply finished when the customer has used it. It may still contain materials, components, knowledge, and value that can be recovered. Regenerative supply chains use circular economy principles to reduce waste and unlock more value from every product. This is good for sustainability, but it is also good for resilience and cost control. Moving toward a regenerative supply chain can feel like a big challenge, but organisations do not need to do everything at once. A practical first step is to map your impact. Understand where your supply chain interacts with natural systems, workers, communities, and local economies. The next step is to rethink sourcing. That may mean prioritising regenerative agriculture, renewable materials, ethical partnerships, or suppliers with stronger social and environmental practices. Collaboration is also essential. No organisation can regenerate systems alone. It requires working with suppliers, customers, NGOs, governments, local communities, and sometimes even competitors. Finally, organisations need to measure what matters. Traditional KP is often focused on cost, speed, and service. Regenerative supply chains also measure outcomes such as soil carbon, biodiversity, waste reduction, supplier well-being, community impact, and long-term value creation. The path to regeneration begins with visibility, partnership, and better measures. The key message from this presentation is that supply chains need to move from net zero to net positive. Sustainability remains important. Reducing emissions, waste, and harm is still essential. But regeneration goes further. It asks how supply chains can restore ecosystems, strengthen communities, reduce waste, and create value beyond the bottom line. This matters because future supply chains will be judged not only by how efficiently they move goods, but by the impact they have on the world around them. Regenerative thinking can lower risk, unlock innovation, build trust, and create stronger relationships across the whole supply chain. It also challenges supply chain professionals to think differently. The question is no longer just, how do we make this supply chain less harmful? The bigger question is, how do we make this supply chain a force for positive change? So, is your supply chain only reducing harm or helping build a better world?